And that fixing is itself a time-consuming process because there has to be so much unlearning that takes place before learning takes place. And rather than focusing early on learning how to grow and how to scale.
We were talking about this before I hit record. They bring you and a team like you in after the fact, and they're somehow expecting your team to perform miracles and turn everybody around in 2 quarters, 3 quarters, if not less. And it doesn't work that way. And so what I've also seen, to your point, is bring them in early. But I would also like to add, and tell me if I'm wrong, it's not just if you can't bring them in early and you still have to bring them in, you have to think about the long game and not giving up and abandoning ship after 12 months of trying to have this huge organizational change. And Michelle, come in here and make all my leaders better. You have 3 days to do it, right? Like, where would a company, if they really want to maximize what you and teams like you do, is this like a 2 to 5 year exercise? Obviously, as long as possible, but when do you really start seeing the rubber meeting the road?
Right. So, especially with rapidly growing technology companies and startups where we work, organizational change, culture, learning and development tend to move at a fairly glacial pace compared to the strategic pivoting that startups can make, right? And there needs to be a better understanding that learning and development, organizational development, culture, and all of the different levers that we have within those domains tend to have a fairly slow impact on the organization. And so the ability of the organization to forecast its needs as long in advance as possible and understanding what L&D, OD, coaching, and culture components need to be influenced and improved in order to achieve those business strategies, the better. And that I think has been, that's a particularly challenging space for technology companies because they want to do everything yesterday, and that just doesn't happen when you're looking at changing human behavior.
It's tough to do it with 5 people, let alone if you have 100,000 or 5,000 even. So it's always kind of funny and sad at the same time that it's like, well, why can't you figure out how to change human nature? Speaking of rapidly changing AI, and we'll talk more about this as well. But what are you seeing already what are you seeing from AI that how are they already transforming leadership and people strategy? What are you seeing on the ground since you're right in it?
Sure. So, one of the things that I think is becoming very, very visible is that given the fact that HR and people functions are typically very under-resourced because they're seen as cost centers within an organization, is that AI is creating new opportunities to make those functions more efficient and able to provide their services within the company with a smaller headcount. That's also, looking at that in the other way around, it's actually making it so that HR and people teams can provide greater offerings and scale an organization again without changing their internal headcount as much. And one of the areas that's most evident, like right now, even at these, early nascent stages of AI in the workplace, is in data analysis and data dissemination. Understanding, helping a people team understand the massive amounts of data they have on the organization in order to make informed decisions that can forecast the direction a company will go and then provide learning and development or organizational development initiatives that support that success.
That's a really good point. I was visualizing as you were talking it, but you just mentioned a few minutes ago, if you can tie your behaviors to OKRs, right? And so I feel like HR has not all the data, but probably in some ways more data than other parts of the business, obviously for the people type of data. Just even today, I used ChatGPT to summarize all of my performance review and spit out what are the top competencies and the top KPIs and what makes somebody great versus good and what makes somebody good versus okay. And I did all that in 5 minutes to funnel this all back up to the business. And so what you're saying is we can use the data to disseminate. You shouldn't downsize your HR teams anymore. AI is not going to be downsizing your support teams, but all it is just going to be supercharging, or it should be supercharging it, right?
Exactly. It's going to be supercharging HR teams, making them much more data driven, bringing them much closer to being strategic partners across the organization. Also, the opportunities to gather more frequent data points on behaviors and impact across an organization is going to have an enormous influence on the role of HR and people in determining learning and development needs. So, as people need to continuously learn about their evolving relationship with technology and how they partner with technology for the business's success, and also getting data and be able to use data in more dynamic ways so that companies can make decisions based on data in a way that previously was being gathered on an annual basis or a quarterly basis in a way that is going to be much, much more dynamic.
Yeah. I'm actually going to take some of what you just said now. I'm just formulating my game plan in my mind because you're like, right, I need to take the data and make sure I'm getting it up to the leadership. So as we're rolling out our FY26 goals, that data should be there to help them make that decision. And that's where we don't do that. And that's a really good call. Okay.
Exactly. Or I'll give you an example. Most companies have a semi-annual or an annual performance review process, right?
Uh-huh.
That means that between that individual and their manager, there are essentially two opportunities: a mid-year and an end-of-year opportunity to get a performance review, have there be a feedback conversation, and then that person then has opportunities to make improvements in their behavior and their contributions, right? Well, if we're able to get that type of data, say for instance in a performance review process or some other type of feedback process on an ongoing basis, that gives individuals and teams opportunities to use feedback much more dynamically to then influence behaviors again more dynamically and more directly linked to the execution of the business strategy.
I'm just light bulbs are going off because I'm like, I took the comments from the review, but I didn't think about taking the feedback on where are my problem managers, are the managers that are great. And there's another few levels that I can actually dig in. So that's a really good call. That's
Yeah, I mean, imagine if you are able to get feedback fairly quickly on your successes or the challenges that you're having in your work, rather than waiting 6 months down the line for that mid-year review or another 6 months for the annual review to then learn, oh, wow, if I had just gotten that type of feedback 4 months ago, I could have course corrected, made improvements that are going to be beneficial to me as a contributor and also beneficial to the team and the organization's performance. So that I think is a huge area where AI is going to be impacting both the people function and in turn learning and development and organizational development.
And that's a good call because and on the last point there, we'll move on. I can use AI to understand where the themes are across the company and be like, hey, I am going to highlight some issues or some opportunities or some successes, and I can apply that across the entire organization, or I can laser focus on this part of the company also needs the same information and not just hey, manager A, here's some feedback 6 months after the fact. I can actually very quickly say, hey, manager A, here's some feedback. And also, all the other managers that are like you, I can give you that feedback now because I can use AI to identify those people and the themes right away versus just this one off. And that you just light bulbing me right now with where I need to be focused on too. That's a good call.
Yes, exactly. And like imagine, yeah, what you're seeing is what with AI, you could say, okay, here's a best in class mid-level manager in the company. And not only can we combine the data that each individual manager is getting in terms of their own behaviors and their performance, but we can then say, here's a best in class manager, here are their behaviors and how we can then infuse their behaviors into other people, into the behaviors of other managers in a company. That is incredibly powerful.
That's huge. I'm going to start working on that tomorrow. You just
Exactly.